Hello ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to my review of Spider-Man Far From Home. Now I am going to start out by doing the spoiler free section and then I'll give you a warning and then I'll jump into the spoiler section. But I'm including it all as one video, but don't worry, I will give you a chance to click away before I launch into spoilers. So let's jump into it. Spider-Man Far From Home, I'd say a solid 7 out of 10. It would probably be around a 6 out of 10, I mean just slightly above average, but it gets bumped up to a 7 because of the importance of the mid and the end credit scenes, which again I won't talk about here until I get to the spoiler section. But I'd put this movie about on par with either of the Ant-Man movies. You know, they're good, just not great. Now some Spider-Man fans might get upset with me giving it such a low rating, but you know, if you want non-stop wall-to-wall praise, there's plenty of other reviews you can go watch. Whereas here, I do have some constructive criticisms to level at the movie. And I can't help but wonder if it wasn't Spider-Man as the main character, if you swapped him out for some other superhero character, would anyone even really care all that much? Would all the Spider-Man hype that I'm seeing for this movie really be there? I mean, how much of it is the quality of the movie and how much of it is just the fact that it's Spider-Man in there? Now, I'm certainly not saying it's a bad movie, not at all. I walked out of the cinema happy. It was a good movie, it was enjoyable. But I just want to push back on this idea that because it has Spider-Man's name and Marvel's name attached to it, therefore it has to reach this extra level of hype. Does it really? I don't think it does. There's certainly things in the movie that are really incredible. There's a section that's sort of like a dream sequence section, which is really visually stunning. Although I did kind of wonder to myself, was that just inspired from Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse? I mean, I actually think that would be a better movie than this. I think that was more creative in its choices than what they did in Spider-Man Far From Home. If you're a fan of the Marvel comics and you know a lot of the characters in the Spider-Man stories, there's going to be certain twists that happen in this movie that you're going to see coming from a mile away. But I suppose for your average normie who doesn't really know the comic books, the twists will be legitimately surprising for them and they'll enjoy it more. And hats off to the marketing for this movie, because none of the twists were spoiled in the marketing, which is always appreciated. And back when Spider-Man Homecoming came out, I said this then and I'll say it again, I do not like this MJ. I'm sorry, I just don't like it. And of course, in today's day and age, when you criticize any character who's not a straight white male, you instantly get accused of racism. That's racist! So I said it back in Homecoming and I'll say it again now. I do not like this MJ. No, it's not because she's part black or whatever she is. She's just so negative, man. Like, I appreciate that she's trying to do something different with the character of MJ rather than just doing the damsel in distress all the time and playing up that whole thing of that she's not smart enough to figure out that Spider-Man is Spider-Man. I appreciate that, but does she have to be so unlikable? She's so sarcastic and she's just not a nice person. It's like, you can do something different with Mary Jane without having to be an obnoxious bitch. I'm sorry, but she is. I don't understand why Spider-Man likes her. She's constantly giving everyone attitude. And I get it, teenagers do that, but it's relentless. It's like being waterboarded with sarcasm and bad attitude every time she opens her mouth. Like, give it a rest, Mary Jane. Seriously, lighten up. But putting her aside, they did a great job of explaining some of the aftermath of the events of Endgame, with people getting snapped away and brought back, and the ones that didn't get snapped away aged 5 years in between, because there's the 5-year gap. And of course, it is humorous to see that pretty much all of the main characters in Spider-Man's sort of circle of friends in his life, they all got snapped away the same as he did, so none of them were like 5 years older all of a sudden. Very convenient, but you know, we'll let that one slide. But that's pretty much all I can say without spoilers, so spoiler warning. Let's talk about the character of Mysterio. Now, as I said previously, if you know Mysterio from the comic books, you're going to see the twist with him coming a mile away, which is he is a secret bad guy. Hell, even if you don't know him from the comics, you're probably going to see that twist coming anyway. Because sadly, these Spider-Man villains do seem to be getting stuck into a certain mold, which is Mysterio is yet another guy who is a villain because Tony Stark upset him in the past. He's a business rival. And while I actually like this this in Spider-Man Homecoming, because that was actually more of a, Michael Keaton's character was more of a blue-collar guy who was being crushed underfoot by the big sort of Stark corporation. I could really relate with that guy, but this guy, the sort of Silicon Valley style, I know everything type guy, him suddenly playing the victim, I'm like, no, I don't find those type of characters the victim. I mean, Stark was one of them guys. He's just another Stark, and we've seen that before. Perhaps it would have been easier to swallow Mysterio as the villain if what his goal in being a villain was different. I mean, he was basically just Syndrome from The Incredibles. He wants to be the hero. He wants the attention and the love that Tony Stark got. That's just not particularly interesting motivation to me. I mean, maybe if his plot had involved people not putting their faith in people like Tony Stark, because he's like, you guys thought he was this great guy. You didn't know what he was like behind the scenes. He was a total jerk. We shouldn't be putting our trust in people like that. Yeah, maybe if his plan was to sort of shatter that illusion in a way, that might have been a bit more interesting, but instead he's like, I'm villain. Why? Because I'm jealous of Tony Stark and he was mean to me one time, and he's got a whole team of those guys who are like that, and it just didn't work for me. I mean, they could have fleshed out his character more, but they've fallen back again into the Marvel trope of killing their villains. Stop killing your villains, guys. I mean, they're better with this now than they used to be. Like, Vulture didn't die, Red Skull came back, so I don't want to be too harsh on this. And it's also possible that Mysterio is not really dead. I mean, he is the master of illusions, but it did seem to be pretty definitive in the movie, but you know, they can always rewrite stuff later on, I guess. But I am glad that Mysterio in the trailer, Mysterio talking about there being a multiverse, I'm glad that that is not true, that was just part of his backstory that was fake, it was just one of his illusions. I'm very glad, because when I saw that in the trailer, I said in my trailer review that if that's what they're going with, I know that the comic books do that, but if that's what they're going with in this, it kind of breaks the ending of Endgame, because the point of Endgame of putting all the stones back is to merge the timelines back together again, so we don't end up in a fragmented multiverse situation. I mean, we have two. We have the main environment, and now we have the pocket timeline where Loki got the time stone and disappeared away. Well, no, it wasn't the time stone, it was whatever. The Tesseract, whatever it was. So we've got two. But yes, I'm glad there is no multiverse, because that would just, you know, all the problems that we used to have in the past when they would have the solo movies and we're like, why don't you call in the other Avengers? Multiverse would multiply that infinitely. You know, whenever you come up against a problem, you could just go into all the parallel dimensions and bring back an army of like 50,000 Thors or 50,000 Hulks, and you could just wipe out any threat that you have to face. So I'm really glad that they're not going with that, because it means you got a magical get out of jail free card, which ruins any tension you might have with villains in the future. So that's off the table, and I'm glad. And there were certain things that Mysterio did, which at the time I was like, that wasn't very well written. But after the twist, you're like, oh, okay, that was deliberately left weird like that, as like a clue that he's not who he says he is. Like when he jumps into the fire elemental and you think he's gonna like sacrifice himself to explode it from the inside and then make a big thing out of it, but then he's just perfectly fine and they're off drinking at a bar like 5 seconds later, and you're like, what the hell was that? And you think, oh, that's badly written. And yeah, it literally was badly written by Mysterio's writer. He has a writer on the side who must have come up with that, and they make a joke that he wasn't a very good writer, and you see it play out there. So I liked that, I appreciated that. And also, it wasn't very well explained why Mysterio needed Edith so much. Basically, his whole plan was to get Edith, and when he does get Edith, it doesn't seem to boost his powers any more than what he already had. I mean, did he need Edith to get the drones? It seemed like he already had enough of them to do all the illusions of the elementals leading up to that. I mean, it just didn't seem all that necessary. I mean, is it just to track his opponents? I mean, I guess it gives him that edge, but I just didn't really feel the punch of this is why he needs Edith. It didn't seem all that important. Seems like he had it handled without it. But let's start talking about the mid-credit scene of Spider-Man getting doxxed worldwide by Mysterio. And I love that J.K. Simmons is back as J. Jonah Jameson, as everybody does. We all love that guy. And I found it very humorous that he was like an Alex Jones style website rather than the guy who runs a newspaper, because nobody reads newspapers anymore. And I hope they go with that, because seeing J.K. Simmons really acting up the Alex Jones side could be hilarious, although it will never be as hilarious as the real life Alex Jones, who is 10 times more cartoonish than any actor portraying him could ever be.
What do I do, Lord? Destroy the child. Corrupt them all. This is their plan, people. These are demons. Just like the Bible says, It's basically an intergalactic invasion into this space through people. I'm telling you, it's what all the ancients said. It's what they warned of. It's what we're dealing with. They're demons. They're frickin' interdimensional invaders, okay? I'll just say it. Make fun of me all you want on CNN or wherever, but everyone already innately knows this. These people are not frickin' humans, okay? Hillary Clinton is a goddamn demon.
And it does raise the question of where to from here. I mean, in DC, I'm more of a DC guy when it comes to comics. In DC, they have a public enemies story where Lex Luthor is the president and he makes Batman and Superman public enemies. Are they going to do a similar thing with Spider-Man? Is he going to become public enemy number one now? I'm not sure how that would work because in that universe, it wouldn't be that hard to clear Spider-Man's name. I mean, everybody at S.H.I.E.L.D. knows what really happened. Everybody at S.H.I.E.L.D. knows Spider-Man didn't do what Mysterio says he does, and it really wouldn't be that difficult to debunk. I mean, I suppose behind the scenes, the people in power, like Nick Fury and all that, they know what happens, even though it wasn't actually Nick Fury. It was one of the Skrulls, but it doesn't matter, effectively the same thing. They all know that Spider-Man is not the bad guy, but there'd be no way to clear Spider-Man's name publicly without Nick Fury going on TV and saying, look, I run this secret organization called S.H.I.E.L.D., we were there the whole time, he's not guilty. And of course, Nick Fury's not going to expose himself publicly like that, although they kind of already did during Civil War, didn't they? The Sokovia Accords, everyone knows about them now. Black Widow testified in front of Congress, so yeah, I mean, Spider-Man and Nick Fury could just go on TV and just explain what really happened. I mean, really, who would believe Mysterio over Spider-Man? I mean, Spider-Man, everyone knows Spider-Man. He's famous at this point. He's your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Everybody likes him. Everybody knows him. Everybody knows he was there fighting Thanos. Mysterio, on the other hand, he just arrived 5 minutes ago. Nobody knows who he is, and now he's suddenly going to say that Spider-Man's a bad guy and everyone's going to believe him? Why would you believe Mysterio over the guy who you've known and who has been fighting for you for a very long time? I mean, unless J. Jonah Jameson's Alex Jones style smear campaign is really, really good, I don't know. It just doesn't seem that big of a threat in terms of clearing Spider-Man's name. It certainly will be a very big threat though in terms of Aunt May being in danger and MJ being in danger and Ned being in danger now, because one of the things I explained in the Shazam movie is the reason that you have a secret identity is not to protect you, because if you're a superhero, you can protect yourself just fine. The reason you have a secret identity is to protect those around you who do not have superpowers, who the villain might target if they can't get to you. That's why you wear the mask. And it was really frustrating me throughout the movie how reckless Spider-Man was with his mask. How many times he just barely put his mask on in time, and how little effort he put into making sure no one could figure out who he was. You're supposed to be smart, Peter Parker. Why don't you use some of that hologram technology from Mysterio to have a hologram Spider-Man swing past the school bus while you're sitting there in the bus? Then everybody knows, oh, Peter Parker's not really Spider-Man. It's just a coincidence he happens to disappear. I mean, you're supposed to be smart, Peter Parker. And just as the mid-credit scene began to roll, I actually said to my friends in the cinema, pretty much everyone who worked for Mysterio know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man now. Pretty much everybody knows he's Spider-Man. Why don't you just tell the whole world? And then of course they tell the whole world. So I guess it doesn't matter because he's doxed around the world anyway, but still doesn't change the fact that Peter Parker was acting very recklessly with his identity throughout the movie. But I guess they knew they were going to dox him at the end, so what difference does it make? Still, smarten up, Peter Parker. And throughout Spider-Man Far From Home, they're constantly asking the question of who is the next Iron Man? Who is the next Iron Man? Now that Captain America's gone, he can't lead the Avengers. Black Panther's busy with Wakanda. Doctor Strange is busy in the magical realm. Thor, Captain Marvel, they're all off-world. So who is there going to be the next Iron Man? That's sort of the core for the Avengers. And you know, when you really think about it, it's actually obvious who it should be. Not a 16-year-old kid like Spider-Man. It should be Professor Hulk. Bruce Banner. He should be the core. He should be the new foundation on which the Avengers is built. Because now that he's got his rage under control, he's the perfect leader. Not only is he one of the strongest, because as the Hulk always say, Hulk is strongest there is. Mind you, the Professor Hulk personality is not the strongest Hulk version there is, but regardless, that paired with his Tony Stark style intelligence and also grounded with his heart, like we saw the way he helped Thor throughout the events of Avengers Endgame, he really cares about people. So I think Professor Hulk is the new Iron Man. He should be the one who looks after everyone and is the center around which the Avengers is organized. It's Professor Hulk. I mean, I know in Age of Ultron, Hulk did actually murder a bunch of innocent people, and that's why he fled fled off-world, but everybody's forgotten about that now. Nobody cares. I mean, now he's taking photos with kids. He's not considered a threat to society, so nobody cares about that. So yeah, he's okay to be the new guy. He's okay to be the new Iron Man. Actually, that's a point. If Hulk's reputation could be dragged through the mud through murdering innocent people in Age of Ultron, and he ends up being okay, then Spider-Man being doxxed and blamed for what happened in this movie shouldn't really be a problem for him clearing his name in the future. So I don't quite think Spider-Man getting doxxed is as big as a deal as people might make it out to be. Something else that's not as big of a deal as they made out was Spider-Man's Spidey sense, or his Peter Tingle, as they hilariously called it in this movie. They have this sort of mini arc of Spider-Man that his Spidey sense isn't really working right. We see that at the beginning when Aunt May throws a banana at him and he doesn't see it coming, and she says his Peter Tingle isn't working right, even though we've seen in previous movies that it definitely is working right. We see the hairs on his arms stand up in Avengers Infinity War when the spaceship arrives. In Civil War, we see him detecting something being thrown at him from behind and avoiding it. So his Spidey sense is working. I mean, they could have easily solved this if they just pointed out he's grieving for Tony Stark and he's distracted with his love for MJ, but they didn't bother say that. I mean, just one sentence from him could have fixed it up. I mean, I actually expected when Aunt May threw the banana at him and said, hey, the Peter Tingle's not working, I thought he was going to be like, it doesn't work that way, I have to have my head in the game for the Peter Tingle to work. But he didn't say anything like that. All we know is that it wasn't working, and then it magically is working in his battle with Mysterio at the end, and they don't explain how. They don't explain how it works. We need to know the mechanics of how the Spidey sense does and doesn't work. That's always been an inconsistency in these Spider-Man movies. Nobody really understands the mechanics of the Spidey sense and how it works. It would be nice to get that sort of fleshed out a bit more. There were also a couple of loose ends in this movie that didn't seem to get tied up. I mean, there was it Brandon? What was it? The Asian guy who was Peter Parker's like romantic rival with MJ. That guy just vanishes from the movie. He's in there and he actually kind of takes up a lot of the role that Flash Thompson should be taking, of being sort of an antagonist to Peter Parker in his normal life. And there seems to be this big thing made out of him competing with MJ, but as soon as she finds out he's Spider-Man, she just doesn't care anymore, and that guy just vanishes from the film. Yeah, I don't think that was really very well resolved. And there was also a weird bit where Flash Thompson at the airport at the end of the movie, his butler or whatever is there to pick him up, and he says, oh, mother couldn't make it, and you feel a bit sorry for Flash Thompson in that moment, but what's up with that? I mean, why'd you put that in there? I mean, I actually went and Googled after this, who is Flash Thompson's mother, because I thought maybe she's a character they're going to introduce, but I couldn't really find anything about her, because when you Google it, it comes up with a lot of stuff with The Flash from DC and his mom. So it's hard to sort of sift through it and find what you want. But yeah, if anyone knows if his mom is someone important, put it in the comment section below, because otherwise that was just a weird thing to kind of throw out there. But the end credit scene shows us that Nick Fury and the How I Met Your Mother girl are Skrulls. The Skrulls from Captain Marvel, if you remember that. Most of us don't. And I guess it makes sense that the Skrulls are now working for S.H.I.E.L.D., because initially I thought, wasn't Captain Marvel supposed to find them another world, like a new home? Wouldn't they be on a planet somewhere, farming and building their own society or whatever? But then when you think about it, considering that the Kree want to genocide the Skrulls, if you did put them on a planet somewhere, the Kree would just show up and just kill them all, so they need some kind of protection. So it seems that S.H.I.E.L.D., by them sort of forming an alliance with S.H.I.E.L.D., that gives them the protection from the Kree that they need. And the concept of Nick Fury being able to have an entire team of shape-shifting spies, that's incredible. That's really incredible, and it should lead to some very interesting things in the future. And the introduction of what appears to be the SWORD organization, that S.H.I.E.L.D. was built around protecting Earth. SWORD is more offensive rather than defensive. It's going out there and taking out threats to the Earth that are not on the Earth. Kind of like the Marvel equivalent of drone striking your enemies on the other side of the world. Kind of like that, which again makes total sense. After Avengers Endgame, you would want to do that. You would need to have a planetary defense for off-world threats, considering Earth was ground zero for the snap, the blip, the decimation, whatever it's called. But I'll tell you, I actually thought that Ned's girlfriend was going to be a Skrull, because she has those weird kind of crazy eyes, so I thought she was going to be an alien or something like that, but turned out not to be. Ned's great though, I love Ned. In some reviews, people saying he's a bad friend because he wants to play bachelors with Peter Parker, but then as soon as he gets a girlfriend, he's not at all interested. That's not a bad friend, that's just part of the bro code, you know? I mean, once a guy hooks up with a girl, any prior arrangements you had with that guy is now wiped, and we all understand this. That's fair game amongst us guys. So no, Ned's a good friend, he's just following the bro code, as he should, and Peter Parker gets that. And, you know, he helps Peter Parker, he backs him up, like he works with him to try to protect his identity and to cover for him. So no, he's a good friend. He's a very good friend. Just because he's helping Peter Parker out and being his friend, does that mean he's not allowed to get some girls on the side? Of course he can. He's not supposed to live like a monk just because he's friends with Spider-Man. He's allowed to have a girlfriend, and he's hilarious. He's hilarious. Everybody loves Ned. I love Ned. So guys, if there's any Spider-Man fans out there, I hope I haven't upset you too much by all of my criticism, because again, I'm just throwing all my criticism out there, but don't misinterpret this. I'm not saying the movie is terrible. I'm not saying it's terrible at all. I'm not saying it's even bad. I'm in fact saying it's slightly above average, but it doesn't mean it's above criticism, does it? So let me know in the comment section what you guys thought. I am Bandit. This is Bandit Incorporated. Until next time, I will see you guys in the comments.